Okay, it looks like we're going to get started. It's 7 straight up. Welcome. My name is Brian Staley. I'm the current chair of the San Geronimo Valley Planning Group. This is a very important topic, and it's great to see you all here. Before we begin with comments from our special speaker tonight, it's important to first off, I'll have all of our current steering committee members that are attending raise their hands so you can see who we are. And Jean, could I see your steering committee hand? So as you probably all are aware, the state has recently instituted new regulations, and the big issue was that our creek, Lagunitas Creek, was designated as officially impaired by the state. What that means is very complex, and Noadiah will be answering any kinds of questions you have about what that means for your particular septic systems, technical questions regarding how to get permits and all of that. But it's important to note that the Regional Water Quality Control Board has mandated that the county create what's called a local area management plan, or a LAMP. And what that means is that the county is obligated to create a process by which they fix the issues. And at this point, we don't technically know because nobody has tested the creek for human E. coli, but that is something that is technically scheduled to be done, I believe, in 2016. And so we will know more. At this point, I will turn the floor over to our chair of our wastewater committee, Dan McKenna.
Well, thanks everybody for coming. And we're fortunate tonight to have Noadiah Eckman, who's a geologist and has been basically designing septic systems and helping people make repairs on septic systems, and recently attended a workshop sponsored by the county on the LAMP regulations that are being put forward, I guess going forward to the Board of Supervisors and eventually being submitted to the state. One point of clarification that actually Noadiah provided for us is we don't know if San Geronimo Creek, which really is from Woodacre to the Inkwells, has been designated as impaired. If it is designated as impaired by the state, the rules kind of change about setbacks going from 100 to 600 feet. But right now, our understanding is it is not impaired. Only from the Inkwells down to Tomales Bay has been impaired, correct?
We need to really stay on top of that too.
Yeah.
Because it goes up and down.
We've got conflicting information both ways.
We want to know.
It's a big, big issue because if it is designated as impaired, regulations then apply 600 feet from the creek versus currently 100 feet from the creek. So we will do our best and keep you informed of that because that's a major issue. So without further ado, Noadiah attended that meeting. It's really confusing from her conversation tonight about what's all going to come down, but what really she can help us all with is understanding what kind of system I have, what triggers county inspections based on her experience. And I'll start off by saying I'm going to put a new roof on my house in the next, I think about 2 weeks he's supposed to come out. It's going to take a county permit. Am I going to get my septic system inspected?
You don't have they won't contact environmental health for maintenance repairs. So a roof wouldn't qualify.
So what types of building permits would trigger an inspection of our septic system?
Things that would affect the leach field. So adding square footage, changing the footprint of your house, putting on a deck, and so the piers, knowing where the piers are in relation to the leach field, a pool, adding a pool, that kind of stuff. And you're welcome to ask me any questions about your property or what you're wondering. I'm just open to answering questions. I don't have a presentation, but I can go into more detail about any one of those things.
So that's kind of how the format is going to work
Yeah.
tonight. It is, folks really don't have a clue about what does the county do when I want to remodel a bathroom or I want to add a bathroom or things like that.
Yeah,
And
so I can.
based on your experience, what happens
Yeah,
when
and you
these
can
things
ask me
happen?
specific questions and I can explain how the remodel policy would apply to that particular thing rather than covering the remodel policy. Do you wanna put
Yeah.
the people for me?
So, the back.
This is not about a remodel. but
Okay.
I've been at my place for 39 years. It's really small, but it's not, there's no leach field. It's a septic box,
Mhm.
and it's been rebuilt. But I've never had any issues with it, any problems with it. But I'm sure I'm within 100 feet of the creek. So what happens in that case if it's been there forever and no problems, no issues with it?
Well,
Would there be a
anytime you
problem?
apply for a building permit, you would have to answer, environmental health would inquire about the type of septic system you have.
But I'm not doing any remodeling, so that would never be an issue. What if I wanted to sell? Would that be an issue then with
Well,
the,
what you have is called a seepage pit, and
yes,
it's a class 4 septic system by the county of Marin, and it would have to be immediately replaced. It's not allowed. And so if you were in a real estate transaction, it would be, it may pass the hydraulic load test, but it may be that the consultant, whomever's hired, would mention that it's actually a class 4 seepage pit, which isn't allowed in Marin County. But, like you said, it functions, you know, in regard, it doesn't meet the setback to the creek, it might not meet setback to groundwater, but it wouldn't come up unless somebody, unless it failed or you were applying for a building permit. And it would come up in your real estate transaction, because certainly when I do real estate transactions, I talk about, there's two ways it works: the water disappears, and then what the regulatory requirements are around remodeling, or when you'd have to replace it and what you'd have to replace it with. There's two parts to a real estate inspection, and it would probably come up in that.
thank you.
Sir.
Now, Doug, could you tell us, please, in general, before all the questions come, what does this bill ask for? What changes? That would probably answer, I think, a lot of questions.
Are you talking about the lamp and the
You know,
new regs?
the state bill that
The
has
AB
passed,
85?
yeah, apparently the state has passed a bill, and now they're asking the counties to implement it. But what is in the state bill? What has changed, other than the
Oh.
600 setback and?
Well, right now, the Marin County, they had a meeting last week with the consultants, and they showed us the draft changes to the regs, and there are very few changes. Marin County has already been instituting what, anytime that you're near a water body, you have to use pretreatment, and that's the bulk of what the state was wanting, and Marin County already does it. So the big change would be if you're near an impaired water body, and it would change, the setback would change from, if you're closer than 100 feet, when I say setback, if you're closer than 100 feet to a water course, in Marin County you have to use what's called a pretreatment unit, which means after your septic tank, you have to put a unit in that treats the water before you put it in the leach field. So it's an extra step. It's septic tank, treatment unit, leach field. And you have to put that in whenever you're closer than 100 feet from a creek. But what would change if the regs say, if you're near an impaired water body, then you would have to put in that pretreatment unit if you were within 600 feet of the creek.
Please, yes, sir.
I wonder if there's, can you tell us what the length of leach field required is is it per bathroom or per bedroom or per kitchen? How does the county decide how many feet of leach field you need for whatever, either bathrooms or kitchens?
It's all based on bedrooms, the number of bedrooms you have. And the bathrooms doesn't matter. It's all, bedrooms control the gallons per day that you have. And the big part in Marin County that I've explained to people a lot is if you don't meet code, meaning you don't meet all the setbacks or the requirements of the book of the code, you can't add bedrooms to your property. So it's the bedroom count that's mixed in with it. So that's usually the question. Can I add a bedroom? No, yes. That's the big question
How
often.
many feet of leach field do you need per bedroom?
Well, it's based on your perk rate and the depth of trench you have, so it varies. So if you have very good soil and it perks really well and it's very deep, you'd have less leach line. you have very shallow soil and it perks slowly, you have more leach lines. So it's based on the perks, and when you're researching for a septic system, what you need, the first step is to dig a pit, and you have to look at the soils to a level where you find the layer that's impermeable, which would be a solid clay. So that pit in your yard determines what kind of septic system you have, how deep it is, how much lime you have. So that would determine how much lime you need.
Can you point us to any source where either we can find a formula to calculate or some guidance as to how we figure that out?
That's why you pay her.
Yeah, you have to hire a consultant for that. The only thing that's online in the code is that you can find out with your perk rate how many gallons per day per square foot you can apply to the soil. But like I said, you'd have to know how deep your soil was. The real trick in septic is you dig a pit to say 5 feet and you hit solid clay. Then you subtract 2 feet or 3 feet, depending on if you're using pretreatment, and that's the depth of your trench. That's the basic formula for figuring out the entire process, is digging that pit and finding the impermeable layer, subtracting a couple feet, and then you say, oh, I can have 3 feet of trench, and then my perk rate's this, and then I can do this many gallons per square feet based on the sidewall area of your trench. Is that enough detail? Is it?
I think I need to hire a consultant.
Yes.
So, I assume that.
Oh, I'm sorry, he's picking.
Okay.
Sorry, excuse me, I went.
Go ahead.
I assume that almost everybody in the valley has a septic system.
Yeah.
And I assume that most people, since property has changed over the years, don't have a record. They don't know what the depth of their septic tank is or the length of their leach field. So this implies that if the state wants to protect certain waterways that may be in danger, there are gonna be an awful lot of people out there inspecting. Would that be true?
I haven't heard or that there would be like random inspections of properties within the setback and people going onto your property and determining what kind of septic system you have. I haven't heard that would be part of it.
If one is 99.9 feet from a water system, but that water system is not declared impaired, then the leach line can remain. I mean, there's no problem if it's determined that the water course is not endangered or contaminated, then anybody who is within 100 feet is okay.
Okay, what do you mean by okay?
In fact, going to be subjected to a requirement by the state to have the system reconstructed.
If the water body is not impaired and your leach field is 100 feet from that water body, it depends on it really depends on what you want to do on your property. At this point in time, the only time that environmental health ever gets involved is if you apply for a building permit, you're red tagged for doing something, or but otherwise, no one trolls the records or knows where they would, you know what I mean? Like, so if you were, it's a complicated question, like, because if you're applying for a building permit, then it would come up, and then it would depend on what kind of building permit you were applying for. But if you're 100 feet from a water course, your septic system has records from when the house was originally built, and it works. You can, it's considered class 3, and you can, and assuming it's not in groundwater, you can add 500 square feet to your house. Does that make sense? Yeah, so, yeah.
So, but in terms of like prices of redoing your septic,
The crisis or?
no, prices?
Prices!
It's prices as well.
Prices, yeah.
So, like, for Christina who would have to replace something that there's no place for a leach field, it would just have to be like a system that's, whatever, so however you can do it without that. What kind of price would you be talking about for like the most expensive engineered system, like just a ballpark?
The cost of septic systems, the construction costs, if you're doing, pre-treatment, you're talking about her near a creek.
She's near a creek, no place on her property to put any leach field or any lines, just a tiny area for the box, and that's it, that's all the space there's available.
Typically, including county fees and consulting fees, septic system replacement costs between $65,000 and $75,000.
For the top end kind, or for any kind?
This year I had several standard septic systems, which means there's no pre-treatment, and they're just trenches with rock, and they didn't end up being much cheaper. So
Okay.
it's safe to say the construction costs have been coming in at
About the
40 to 50,000, the
you.
construction costs.
And the soft costs?
The county consulting is typically like 10 to 12, and the county, depending, is about 6 to 7.
Okay, thank you.
What determines if your water system is impaired, and who does the determination?
I believe it's the State Water Quality Control Board, and impaired means it's pathogens or nitrogen problem. And I actually don't know their process. I think he would know better. They're testing the water course and determining if it has a high pathogen count or nitrogen problem.
The state has designated, and this is based on the information that we've got from Regional Water Quality, that they have scheduled sometime in 2016 for doing what's called an MST study that differentiates E. coli from animal and human, so you know if it's human septic systems that are contaminating the creek.
Yeah, and that's pathogens. That's the same thing.
What time of the year do they normally do that?
The testing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's important.
Sir?
I'm working on a project where we want to add on 500 square feet. The building's within 100 feet. The leach field is beyond a 100-foot area. It's not a lot of area, but even with the advanced treatment system, is this new rule going to be in effect possibly, or is that 600 feet? Is that going to impact us now, or?
Not now.
Not now?
It's not happening now. The draft lamp is going to the state in April, and then it would probably be, I think, a year. But it would only matter if you're near an impaired water line.
Okay.
It wouldn't. The step back's not going to change if the water course isn't designated impaired. And right now, the only creek here that's designated as impaired is Lagunitas.
What's a little confusing about that, just to be clear, is that we've been told by Regional Water Quality that they technically consider anything that feeds into those impaired water bodies, the tributaries, as also impaired. Now, we're gonna talk with them further, and we're gonna find out more about this. So, but at this time, what we've been told by people that are high up in the echelon at Regional Water Quality is they consider any tributaries that are also feeding into that creek as also impaired. So, but we need to verify that.
Yeah.
But if you're applying for a permit right now, that's not coming up with environmental health. We're not talking about that right now.
Okay. Can you put the septic tanks and treatment systems within the 100 feet, but leave the leach field outside of that?
So, can you tell me more what kind of creek it is? Is it running all year? Is it San
Yeah,
Geronimo?
it's Paper Mill Creek.
Oh, okay. And what you just want to add 500 square feet? And you're not adding a
Yes.
bedroom?
Up. We're not adding to the footprint, just adding up,
But it's just 500 square feet?
just under. Yeah.
And then is the bedroom count that you have now match what your assessor, parcel, or environmental health or building records say?
Partly it's an odd zoning,
Mm-hmm.
but in talking to environmental health, they want to work with us in terms of entitlements.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're entitled to 2 as opposed to 1 bedroom, I'm not quite sure. I think we can get 2,
Okay.
but then we're limited in land area for the leach field. So I'm
So
just-
if you're entitled to 2 and you only have 2, and you're only adding 500 square feet, you don't have to meet code. You just do the best you can, because you're not increasing the use on your property. So you can go closer than 100 feet if you have to. Because, so, say the tanks and the way the property is have to be 75 feet or 50 feet from the creek, because that's the only place they can go to get gravity fall. And you can do that if you're not adding bedrooms to your property. So
Okay.
yes.
I think we should talk to you afterwards.
Okay.
Please.
If I'm not worried about adding square foot or anything like that, but I'm really concerned about the 100-foot versus the 600-foot,
Yes.
what kind of talk of grandfathering is there? I mean, this is my retirement. I mean, there's gotta be something about putting in a
So when they
different
change the
system.
setback, what it'll most, so right now, the way it works is, you can always repair your septic system, no matter where it is. You can always repair it. I have jobs that are like 2 inches from smallest bay. I mean, on 70% slopes, you can always repair your septic system. But what you can't, what the regs control is the size of your property and the number of bedrooms you can have. So no matter what, no matter where you are, if you don't meet the setbacks and you're not adding more than 500 square feet and your bedroom count is matches what's in building or environmental health or is the tax records, then you're okay. You just replace your septic system. Obviously, if you're, what will change for you though, the difference between the 100 and the 600 is usually we don't do pre-treatment if you're more than 100 feet from a creek. But you would have, if you're near an impaired water body and you're within 600 feet, that would add pre-treatment to your septic system.
What if there are more bedrooms that were in the original tax
Yeah.
records because people buy houses that have been added on to and
Well, when you're repairing your septic system, you're only entitled to whatever, either, if there are records in environmental health, whatever those say. It's rare there's records, it's hit or miss, 50-50. Or that if there's building records, then you go to those. And if there's neither, then you go to the tax assessor records. And you're entitled, he just mentioned what bedroom you're entitled to. So say your house is 3, and, but it's actually 4. But you want to replace your septic system. So we design it for 3 bedrooms, because that's what we have to do.
so
But the only time environmental health would ask about your bedroom count is if you submitted architectural plans. Then the architectural plans would have to show 3 bedrooms.
or if you sold, you'd have to,
Well, exactly, you'd have to disclose, I have an extra bedroom that's not permanent.
okay.
Or, I mean,
That
I'm not a
helps.
real estate lawyer, but.
How do I find out what kind of records there are on my property?
You can call environmental health and just give them your address.
But doesn't that give them a red flag?
No, not at all. You can just say, does this address, I call all the time for people, I go, does this address have records? And they say yes or no, and then they email them to me, it's public record. And they don't ask who you are, or, it doesn't
Can you give
matter.
us that contact information later?
Sure, so, yeah, you can just call right up to the desk and it doesn't, you can ask them all kinds of questions, and there's no flags or anything.
One thing that I wanted to point out that we've heard, and I think there's a fear that the county is going to come down and kick people off their house if they can't meet code. That's not gonna happen.
No, you can always repair your septic system.
Yes,
You can always repair your septic system.
there's not gonna be a huge thing that's gonna happen.
Yeah.
Would it, 'cause
Well, let me,
oh, sorry.
One last question. On a pre-treatment system, if you use one of those systems, can you reduce the amount of leach field area?
Yes, you reduce the amount of leach field area you need by half.
And they're offering now a number of new technologies, including surface irrigation.
Oh, yeah,
And a number of different pre-treatment systems are now authorized by the county. A system called Advantech. There's even a peat moss system that renders the effluent nearly drinkable. It's pretty surprising, according to the manufacturer.
It's clear.
According to the manufacturer.
It's clear. It's got a hue from the peat moss, but little teeth, like teeth. But you can always use drip irrigation, that's an allowed system now. And people do use, it's a water reuse system. The water that comes out of these treatment units is extremely clean. And the drip tubing that is allowed by the county has a purple stripe and it's 8 inches below ground. People who have it have lawns. You know,
Right
they have
here,
a
and
nice
then
lawn.
Jean.
So,
I had a question because our property isn't 100 feet from the creek, and it's a really, really small lot. With one of the new systems, I know you just said that it cut down the size of the leach field needed, but could there ever be a property that just didn't have enough? Because I mean, we have a tiny amount of space at our back.
no, the ideal is extremely small lots, like, that are like 200 square feet. I mean, yeah, no, you can always do something. What I did recently, they're on the creek, they're 20 feet from the creek, there's water in it right now. They have 200 square feet in their yard, and they did an aerobic treatment unit, the bubbler in their tank, and then it pumps to a peat moss filter, which is 3 feet by 7 feet, and that's the only area that leach field is, 3 by 7. So, yeah, there's all kinds of things you can do, and it doesn't, you just deal with what you have. And the mitigation is always pre-treatment. Whenever you have a small area, you don't meet setbacks, you just do that.
Should we do that now or should we wait? Because I was last time I came, I kind of did more research, and I really like the idea that you can irrigate, you know, your property with the new ones, but I didn't know if I should wait until the septic's been checked, because I know there's lots of talk about the sewers and maybe or maybe not, and I didn't know whether I should react or just wait.
Where do you live?
On Park Street.
Oh, and that's the community system sewer thing you're talking about, the,
It's really a question for you to,
yeah, I don't know. If you're not within 100 feet now, the 100 feet to 600 feet wouldn't affect you, so.
No, we are at 100 feet.
You are 100 feet. But the important thing, and I don't know the answer right now to this question, but the Board of Supervisors meeting is going to be soon with the new draft regulations. And what will matter is even if you're not within 600 feet, you can repair your septic system. But if you want to add bedrooms,
Oh, we don't want that.
yeah, that is the big change. So suddenly the 500 feet will determine if you can add a bedroom or not.
Okay.
And that I think is the time issue that might concern people.
Okay.
But either way, you'd always be able to repair your septic system.
Jean?
I'm trying to make notes. There's a great group, good questions. And just three quick things. There are a lot of people with redwood boxes in the valley, a lot of them. They're not gonna tell you who they are, and they work, and they're happy with them. And we need to write that up in some way, not encouraging it or whatever, but letting it be known that we have them, that they are working, that people might wanna know how they relate to a stream or whatever in some other ways. The second thing is, it sounds very complex, and every county is struggling with it, I'm sure. But the second thing I wanted to say is that there may be few changes that may impact us on this whole thing. That's possible. But I want to make sure the planning group is on top of any changes the county does plan to make. I think we are all entitled to know what those changes might be, why, what it's going to cost us, how to fix the environment. So we'll be on top, the planning is going to be on top of that. The last thing is, very early on, you mentioned, I thought this was really important, it implied to me that everybody in this room ought to know what kind of a system we've got. They ought to know that. You know, do you have a permit? Do you not have a permit? When was it built? Is there a map of it? And it sounds to me like one service the planning group could do is provide the information that people need to ask. Because I know somebody throws something at me and I go, I don't have a clue what the first question is, but we can help with that.
Yeah.
And then if everybody has that, then they've got that information, and if they have some plan or something, or a further question, they've got a base to move from. So we're gonna work on that. I'm gonna keep taking notes, so keep asking good questions.
Quick note, just to add, the status now on the county lamp is that it has been drafted by EHS. The supervisors have yet to vote on it, so that still has to take place.
That's the next
Then once the supervisors approve it, it's sent to regional water quality at the state level, and they decide whether or not it meets their criteria. If some aspects of the plan don't meet their criteria, they'll kick it back to the county and have them revise it. So that's essentially where we are now.
Well, my overall question is really about the cost here in the county, comparing it to building a septic system in other places. You know, I've talked to people who built a very difficult system for $12,000 up in, you know, some other part of the hills of Sierra Nevadas. And but that system here would be like $80,000. And I think that is we're just, that's what's holding people back from doing the changes they need to make, and we just have to find a way to work with the county to create, whether it's standard kind of systems, or what can we do to really make it so that we can all do really the right thing and upgrade our septic systems, but not mortgage ourselves to be able to do it, because not many people have $60,000-$70,000 sitting around.
No, it's true. Marin County is actually a pretty difficult area for septic systems compared to other counties. In the Sierras, they have deep soils. Marin has really shallow soils, a lot of clay, high groundwater, mixed jumbled rock, crazy steep slopes. I mean, we're talking many people for 60% slopes. I mean, and water courses and things like that. It's actually, and also these very small lots. And one of the things that drives up costs is if they can't get a machine. That's what, you know, you're on the hill there in Forest Knolls. So there's that. But you're right. One of the things I tell my clients is it's really 0 to 60. The only time you don't have to replace your septic system is if it's the original one that was installed. It works. It's not in groundwater, and it's not within the setback to a water course. And then you get to add 500 square feet. You do very little, but there's no in between, which is what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So it goes right to meeting the regs as best you can. And you know, I think environmental health is probably in a bind, because you do need to meet the setbacks to creeks, and like the state's getting stricter. Now it's the state's even saying, no, now you got to be 600 feet from a stream, or you have to use pretreatment. So, and the pretreatment does drive up the cost. It adds $10,000 to $15,000 to the construction cost.
Well,
I got a follow-up to yours. How does Sonoma stack up against Marin as far as cost?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't work in Sonoma.
Okay.
I know that they have a yearly expense, that they have a whole department that I think they charge $250 per household, and then that goes into their environmental health department, or whatever they call it.
Yeah, and I know some environmental health are funded from the general fund and some are not, and they're different in every county. The fees, they have different structures of their bureaucracy, and I'm not familiar with that.
But couldn't there be like something like a group purchase, or something where we focus on the certain pretreatment things and then make that like a standard? What can we do to come up with?
Economies of scale.
With making things an economy of scale and creating systems for people here in the valley?
Well, I think what's hard is that each individual has to have their own pretreatment unit and their own system, and they all have to monitor it themselves. And so one word that's thrown around is called the decentralized system, which is what the 300 houses in Woodacre are suggesting to do. You know, you cluster people, and then they share costs, because you only have to build, it's a bigger treatment unit, but it's you know, so decentralized wastewater is the nice medium between putting in a sewer system, you know, and having a centralized thing, and just individual homeowners handling it. But, well, you know, that's theoretical. That's just, you know, people, we talk about that in my industry. But I don't see it happening. I'm sorry, you know, but that would be the way. If people could share in the cost rather than each individual having to handle it. And I know there are communities that do that. Paradise is one. That might be good to research. Paradise, California, the town did a community system. And maybe, I don't know if the costs are cheaper or how the homeowners feel, but I believe they pay like into a fund.
The town of Tamales in Marin
Yeah.
has its own sanitary district.
Marshall, they built a community center.
Yeah, so you could research about them or their costs and how the community feels, because I'm not.
They actually got a grant from, I think it was Building and Waterways or one of those.
It took over
Yeah.
10 years.
Yeah, so.
It took a long time, but now they have a system.
But you could research how they like it, if it's cheaper, are there grants, that's not, you know, that might be one way avenue. But I don't know much about it.
My understanding is you can hire a septic contractor who's licensed in the state of California, and it might be very cost saving to put them up somewhere, but I don't know how our county, like whether they have, if our county's like cliquish in terms of they want their people doing the work. But it could be a big cost savings if you could hire someone from another county to come here. It's mostly a hole in the ground, and it's not that complicated.
There's actually,
These new systems are very complicated. My
But I mean,
experience
if you
when
could
people
just
do
repair-
hire someone who's not familiar with Marin County,
Yeah.
it's not that they're cliquish, it's that the requirements are very strict, and the way they do things is very, very by the book, and they have a lot of inspections. They have 5 inspections, and sometimes, my experience with it's not it just doesn't go as well, my experience of that. But if you're, I mean, I understand what you're saying, like, but it is very complicated, actually. These newer septic systems aren't really a hole in the ground. There's control panels and telemetry and several pumps, and so there is some, but I would be cautious, but make sure they don't have a clause in
Is
the
it
contract for
reliant
change
on
orders.
electricity?
Huh?
yes, all
Because we have-
pre-treatments,
there's a
all
lot of
pre-treatment
Yeah.
systems have pumps and must be connected to the grid.
Yeah.
To elaborate just a little further, there have been lawsuits where in the past, certain counties in the state of California actually insisted on a slate of individuals that they authorized, and the court found, I believe in the 2 or 3 cases that occurred, that counties cannot do that. So
Yeah,
they're
you can
actually
hire
mandated
anyone you like who
to
has the-
basically
yeah.
let anybody
Yeah,
who
you
is
can.
certified work on your system.
You
Let
can
me
do
get you in
that.
the back, sir.
So we have we're within the 100-foot setback. We haven't actually changed the number of bedrooms. We're looking to sell in the near future, and we have a legal gray water system. How does that affect, and we actually have no idea what the actual leach system is, we just know that we have a cement tank. Because there's no record of what the leach system is.
Okay.
How does the gray water use affect the amount of leach system you need?
You don't get credit for using
Okay.
gray water. You still have to design the leach field for full flow.
Okay.
This is my question, so, I wanted to know, what was the name of that bill
Kitchen
again,
area,
the number of the
septic.
bill?
AB 885.
885. And, is there a map that maps out the, at-risk water body and the
The
tributary?
document that you may want to refer to is called OWTS. It's on the state website, and it basically shows which bodies of water have been designated as impaired for nitrogen. Lagunitas Creek is listed, and as we mentioned, there's still a question of whether or not the regional water quality is going to insist that tributaries feeding into that are also impaired, or whether it just ends up becoming Lagunitas Creek exclusively.
At what point will that happen? Yeah.
That's already all these regulations are officially in effect now, isn't that correct?
I'm
The
talking about the
OWTS.
tributaries. When will
Oh,
a decision be
you
made
know,
about tributaries?
That's actually, I can hand that off to Lisa. Lisa Cross is a administrator for Supervisor Kinsey.
Yeah, thank you. I can't give you an exact answer about the when, but just to add a little bit to what Brian was saying about the regulations, that in addition to AB 885, there was a regulation that's related to the Federal Clean Water Act and the listing of streams. So the streams are listed under the Clean Water Act. It's called the 303D list, worth remembering. And as a result of that listing, all water bodies are supposed to be studied for the remediation of the pollutant that's been identified. And Lagunitas Creek was identified for pathogens and nutrients and sediment. And we have what's called a TMDL, which is a total maximum daily load, very jargony, I'm sorry. It basically draws a line that says this stream should not be polluted any further than this sort of line of so many parts per million of the pollutant. A plan is then drawn up for the remediation of that pollutant. Lagunitas Creek, we have a pathogen TMDL. That pathogen TMDL becomes the standard by which the regional board then dictates all of their actions. The pathogen TMDL for Lagunitas Creek identifies the tributaries as being polluted and sources of pathogens. So that will be a big driver in the LAMP. And really it will be the regional board pushing on the county to address the TMDL and the actions that are called for in the TMDL. So it's complicated and very bureaucratic, but the county will be pushed towards including the tributaries.
Thank you.
That makes sense.
That's super clear. That's very clear.
Let me get some new folks.
We're considering putting in a new system, and I'm wondering what determines with the new systems that require annual inspections, and how can you potentially avoid that and their implications?
All alternative septic systems, which are ones with any form of pretreatment, so sand, Advantex, peat, require monitoring. So the only standard septic systems there are either a tank with a gravity field or a tank with a pump to trenches with rock. That's standard. So what determines that for you is how much soil depth you have in your yard, how much good soil you have, and proximity to setbacks, particularly water.
And does
groundwater.
bedroom numbers determine that as well? Because the house, for example, the house right next to us doesn't require annual inspections, and they have a relatively newer system.
It's not the bedroom count, it's the soils, it's the type of soils, because you're always looking to meet setbacks to groundwater and surface water. That's always the driver of when you know, that's usually, that's the driver. It just depends on what your conditions are. But you could look up your neighbor's data and see, and get their file and see kind of what went down and why they did what they did, and kind of get an understanding of what it might be like for you and what they did. It's all public record, or you could have someone look at it for you.
Just to mention, I did a real quick, standard two-stage tank. The first chamber, house is here, comes in. First chamber takes all your solids and stops them in the first chamber. Second chamber, basically the effluent that is non-solid comes into that second chamber. Out of the second chamber is then sent to the pre-treatment system. As we mentioned, there's a variety of different certified pre-treatment systems that the county approves of. Some of them pump oxygen into the system. Some of them, as we mentioned, use peat moss, sphagnum peat moss to actually do the filtration. There's a variety of different systems. It goes from your tank into that, then into your leach field.
Yeah, that's great. That's perfect. That's exactly right.
One thing I wanted to emphasize here too, if you don't know what you have, or in this case you wanted to know how your neighbor prevailed in not having the same type of system, contacting EHS is a public record. There's no record of you phoning and then a further research. It's not like that at all. All this information is available at EHS.
It's definitely what you mentioned. It's the first step. I always ask people, do you have records? That's where you start.
This is sort of related to maybe selling the house. So if you have a seepage pit that's been working for 100 years, it's been repaired, and I don't know if I know it's outside of 100 feet, but it may not be outside it's not outside of 600 feet. If I do decide to sell the house, can it be grandfathered in, or does it need to be replaced first, or can the the price of the house go down, you know, 65,000 if I don't wanna deal with the septic? That kind of thing?
Well, seepage pits aren't allowed. Seepage pits are different than this. Seepage
Right.
pits are basically a tank with a hole, so the solids, you know, there's no treatment at all. Goes straight
Typically a
in.
redwood box with
Just-
slats
yeah, so
and
the, you
gaps,
know,
so
so
the
we
water
call
flows
it
into the
So
dirt.
either way, it
Solids,
needs
we
to
call
be-
it solids,
yeah.
but my experience in real estate transactions, if I'm called in, so there's two things, as I mentioned to the other person. Does the water disappear? Does that mean it works? And then does it work in order to do building permits, manage your building count, your bedroom count, the value of the property? Those are different. Like the water disappearing and then what the county allows in regulatory compliance, they're a little bit separate. But my experience when I'm called in a real estate transaction, I would write a letter saying this is a seepage pit, it's not allowed. You can't do any building with this, any remodeling, the county doesn't allow it. And then I would probably put in that letter, and it's this much to replace it. So, I don't know, you talk to your realtor about what's best to do, but if I was called, that's what I would do.
Tell the truth, that's what you do.
Yeah, ask your realtor, there's a good one.
And we
Tell
have,
the
yeah,
Because
realtors.
if you have it on your disclosures that that's what you have, you're not gonna get sued because you lied.
Yeah.
I know, that's what
Who hasn't,
Yeah.
you haven't asked a question yet.
You said that septic systems can always be repaired. Does that mean any one of these steps you can actually repair it? Like leach fields or that kind of thing, and if you do repair it, does that mean environmental health will come and you actually will have to redo your system?
Uh-huh.
I'm a little confused about
Okay.
what you mean
Well,
about repairing.
so the first thing you can always do, that's pretty simple, is if you have a redwood tank and you wanna put in a new tank that meets code, that is watertight and does the proper pre-treatment, you basically, anytime you get solids out in this step, you protect your leach field. So people do tank replacements all the time. It's an over-the-counter permit. It's very easy to get. And then all that happens is you set a new tank, and then you have to test that the leach field works. But people do that pretty often. That's a nice upgrade. And so
How
that's
about-
one you can do one step. And then often, I'll tell you, when people say your septic system is failing, you should always check that this pipe is connected and not broken. This pipe here, you can fix this pipe without a permit. You can add this is a riser. If your tank is buried underground, you can, without a permit, you can add a PVC riser and a fiberglass lid to make sure water doesn't seep into your tank so your leach field's not dealing with extra water. You can always put an effluent filter on your septic tank without a permit. That keeps, the game is to keep water and extra water and solids out of your leach field because that'll overburden that. You can do all that without a permit. If you touch this pipe, you need a permit.
So if you get into the leach fields, you
Mhm.
need a permit.
This pipe, you can repair. This one, you need a permit.
Anybody else who hasn't asked a question yet? Then we can start doing the repeats.
Question on septic tanks. What's the standard septic tank nowadays? Are they still concrete, two-stage, or are they?
Yeah, this has been the same since the 1800s. So yeah, they're all have a baffle in the middle, solid settle scum rises. This is called primary treatment, and then it goes there. The standard size in Marin County is 1,200 gallons if you have 4 bedrooms or less. If you have an existing septic tank that's 800 gallons and you have a permit, a class 3 permit, which means a permit from when the house was in, you can often keep that tank, even though it's undersized.
1,000 or 1,200.
Yeah, that's the standard size. That's a good size. If the tank's smaller, you just have to pump it more often. That's good.
How often, what's a reasonable time period to go between pumping your tank? What would you like?
3 to 5 years, but it really depends on, so if you're on the monitoring program, every year someone measures the level of sludge in here.
Stick it?
Yeah, you can stick a stick in and then pull it out and then you measure it. If it's more than 18 inches, I'd pump it.
Definitely.
Because you don't want the solids going in here. It really makes a big difference in the life of your leach field. So we
They
say 3 to 5
recommend
years.
usually every 36 months. on
Yeah, so
average.
3 to 5 years, and in monitoring, I'm noticing that's true, and just depending on use, but, yeah, it's just 18 inches. Shovel, good, wash it.
Anybody else hasn't got a question in yet? Repeats.
What do you consider a tributary in the winter here, every hillside turns into a stream in these floods. So there's tributaries everywhere. Is a tributary of a tributary of a I mean, where did? How?
You know, I don't know the answer to that, and it's getting more strict, and there's, the state's really weighing in more on, used to be, we just said, well, it's dry, or you measure the stream bank, but I'm not an expert in that, and usually people have to defer to the state, defer to planning, or hire someone, water specialist to define it now. It's getting more complicated, so I'm not actually an expert in that area, sorry. You might have more.
I mean, I would say also that the bar has risen too,
Yeah,
including ephemeral streams.
It rose
And there
really
is-
fast.
There's a map of ephemeral streams that you could look at that would be helpful.
Yeah, yeah.
Is that a seasonal?
The map is located where?
Let me just think about that for a minute. It is in the county's marinwatersheds.org website. And, perhaps we'll just follow up with an email link that you can put in the newsletter.
And they have the blue line on there,
Yeah.
and then that's,
Would that include the 100 feet on either side of it, or 600 feet on either side of it? So that you can see the zones and just be able to see
It's an
yourself?
approximation.
yeah.
It's an approximation.
Well, on that note, this actually is, it's not an official county map and does not necessarily designate which are ephemeral and non-ephemeral streams. You can assume that anything that dries during the summer months completely and has no water in it, or that's at a certain slope, is considered an ephemeral stream. And they often refer to them also as green line. The main creeks are referred to as blue lines, and the ephemeral streams are typically referred to as green lines, and that's how you can designate them on many maps. They'll show them as slightly different colors.
Yeah, we definitely check for blue lines, that's the big one.
For those of you on your way out, I'd recommend you take a look at a map and see where you are with regard to all of the different aspects.
We have that on our website?
We will soon, we do not currently, but we will have a version of it. I want to pose a question we got via email, just because there's a number of people who not only couldn't make it, but are infirm or unable to, physically get around and still own property. The question was, my septic is unfortunately older fiberglass, but they're concerned about what the regulations will bring, and the question is, in a worst-case scenario, could the new regulations from the state and/or existing regulations force people out of their homes in an absolute worst-case scenario?
No.
What would you say would be just to sort of elaborate further, what is one of the worst circumstances you've seen that made your work difficult?
The Coastal Commission. No, environmental health is really, if you're replacing your septic system, you do the best you can. But on small lots that are really tiny and difficult, pre-treatment is usually always the mitigation, this thing. And you just do the best you can.
That was a great question, though, by the way, in terms of electrical requirements, is that all pre-treatment systems demand some kind of pump, whether it's an air pump or water pumps. So every single one of them need to be connected to the grid.
Yeah, and that's part of that cost, is if you have to upgrade your panel. But yeah, there's a lot going on.
Remotely monitored too, by phone lines to a company? Is that how
Well,
that works?
one system called the Advantex, which requires that their product you have a dedicated phone line for the panel to call in to the manufacturer to report water use, and also for alarms.
Pump alarms, right?
Yeah, pump alarms,
That's
and
nice.
but only that manufacturer has the phone line. There was some mention in the LAMP, and that they might require telemetry for more people, for all other kinds of systems, so that might come up.
We had a question over here.
Just on the pre-treatment, what sizes does a unit come in? And how is it determined what size you need? And could you just drop it into your existing system as a solution if somehow it's determined that your system is failing? Is that enough?
Yeah. There's a lot of different kinds of pretreatment units, but one that you're talking, the one that is interesting that I've done quite a bit is when you take an existing septic tank and you can add a pretreatment unit in this, right in here, and that saves you some money because it's all about the number of tanks and the number of pumps. This is an aerobic unit, it blows air in, and you can put it in your septic tank. So that cuts out this. So, and then if you're not using aerobic, then you're using a media. You're using sand, you're using textile fabric, you're using peat, you're using all kinds, just basically, and you need a pump to recirculate it over and over for it to treat it in that media. This doesn't need a pump, but it does need a blower, which some people are. Some of them are internal bubblers, some are out external blowers, and that's, I always work with the client about the noise level, what they like, what bothers them, what, in really quiet areas. So there's different treatment units, and it's really specific. But I've done it a lot. It saves about $10,000 if you can reuse your septic tank, if you have a good watertight septic tank, to put the treatment in it. This isn't a class 1 system, the aerobic system. You can't add a bedroom with it, but you can always do a repair with it.
Thank you.
What happens when the power goes out for a few days?
Well, when you design a new system, all the tanks with pumps in it have emergency storage. They have to have 1 day of emergency storage for power outages. It's usually about between 200 and 400 gallons, depending on the size of your house. So you have to put that in the design. So usually these tanks are like 1,000 gallons with a pump in them.
Let me work my way from there and this way. And then Lisa.
As someone who's interested and has been thinking for quite a while of upgrading my system just because I care about the creek.
Yeah.
Just really basically, it sounds like the first step I have to get is to hire a consultant to find out all these things about perking and all this other stuff. Is that the case?
Yeah, the first thing you do is call a consultant and then you'd say what you're asking, and then I'd say, what are you trying to accomplish? Like, does your system have records? Do you have a good tank? And we would meet and talk about different things you could do. Could you reuse this tank?
What system works best?
What system works best? What do you like? What's the price of this one? Can you use this tank? Can you get a machine on your lot? This and this and that. And then it's really about narrowing down the construction cost for you, and if you're interested, and then you go, well, do I want to do it or not? And then and then the prices of everything and the whole steps of getting the permit.
The second part of that question is, if someone was to do it proactively before these regs changed, what happens if then after you invest all this money in a system, it goes from like the 600 to the 100 or?
Well, they won't come and make you do anything more. You've done the mitigation.
It's unlikely that they'll go back into an old regulatory regime. Not really.
Yeah, I mean, I think it won't change. So I think everyone thinks that you can't do it because it's 600 feet. I think the only thing that'll change is that you will have to put in pre-treatment. That's always the mitigation. That's my understanding of how it's going to be with the 600 feet. Marine already does that, so actually not a lot's going to change except for creek designations, which environmental health isn't controlling. That's coming from someone else. But the environmental health procedure will be very much the same as it is now. It's the setbacks and the designations of creeks that are changing that are complicated. But I think it would change your development rights if you wanted to come back later and add bedrooms. But if you added the bedrooms now, it would be grandfathered in.
It's more
if you
about
could.
selling later and stuff.
Yeah.
Than anything.
No, you'd have a new septic system that would have a permit that had the mitigations to protect the environment. I mean, you would have done everything you could.
So,
If you have a 1,200 gallon tank, and it's rated for how? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
respond a little bit more. My understanding of it is that if you're adding bedrooms, you're gonna need to bring your system
Yeah.
up to a class 1.
Yep.
This is exactly right.
And the change in the regulations and which creek is listed or not will never force you to go beyond a class 1. So if you brought it to class 1, you're good.
Is there something beyond class 1?
No.
No,
That's my
yeah.
point. If
Not
you've
yet.
done what you-
A1.
Sorry.
Yeah, and that's if you meet code, all the regulations, there's that's class 1 and you can add bedrooms. You don't meet code, you can't add bedrooms.
On a 1,200 gallon tank, how many bedrooms can be assigned to a 1,200 gallon tank?
In Marin County,
Marin County, yes.
1 to 4.
1 to 4.
Maximum, with a maximum of 4.
Yeah,
Okay, so
maximum of 4. If you have 5 bedrooms, you need a 1,500 gallon tank.
what happens if you have 2 bedrooms now, and you want to put in a third, and it's still under the, fits into the 1,200 gallons? Would that set off,
Anytime you add a bedroom, you need to put in a new septic system.
even though the tank can take it?
It's not the tank.
Oh, it's a leach field.
It's this,
It's
it's
a
this
leach
bad
field.
boy.
I see, okay.
Yeah, that's, yeah, and if you wanna add a bedroom, you have to meet code, and you have to go through the whole process.
I see, thank you.
Yeah, the tank.
So
If
let-
your tank's still good, you could reuse it
Right.
if it's 1,200 gallons and you're doing it through, you can reuse your tank if it's good
Mhm.
in the class 1 criteria, if it meets the setbacks of the foundation and other setbacks. It's all about setbacks.
I see.
Yeah.
So we promised Noadiah that we'd get her out here by 8. She has some childcare issues, lives in the East Bay. So what I wanted to thank her.
Oh, you can have